Hi, I'm Steve James, and thanks for joining us on this weekend's 30 Minutes. This weekend, we recognize Juvenile Court Judge Jim Bradberry on his 45 years of service to Weakley County. Judge Bradberry recently retired and was honored with a proclamation by Weakley County Mayor Dale Hutcherson. Also attending that ceremony, Judge Brent Bradberry, former Attorney General Tommy Thomas, Chancellor Mike Maloan, Attorney Beau Pemberton, from the Juvenile Court, Keith Jones, and General Sessions Judge Tommy Moore.
It's unreal what you've done for our community, for our county, and the impact you've had on our state. And the least we can do is read you and prepare for your proclamation that I hope you'll appreciate today. And I know in your retirement letter, you said, in the end, it's not the years in your life that count, it's the life in your years. And you certainly had a lot of life in your years, and you have plenty of years to go. But hopefully you'll do that, do those remaining years in a more relaxed state of mind. So with that, I'll read this proclamation, Judge. Whereas Judge James H. Bradberry has faithfully served the citizens of Weakley County as the first and only juvenile court judge of Weakley County for 45 years, with integrity, compassion, and an unwavering commitment to justice. And whereas over the course of his honorable tenure, Judge Bradberry has shaped countless young lives, presiding not only with wisdom and fairness, but with a heart rooted deeply in the well-being of our community at large and in our community's most vulnerable. And whereas his courtroom was never simply a place of law, but rather a place of learning, understanding, and often second chances, guided by his steady hand, sound judgment, and belief that every citizen, and most importantly, every child, deserves an opportunity to be heard and helped. And whereas Judge Bradberry's leadership extended beyond the bench, offering guidance to families, collaborating with law enforcement, and partnering with educators, counselors, and local leaders to build a safer and stronger Weakley County. And whereas his retirement marks the close of an extraordinary chapter of public service in Weakley County, Tennessee, and the beginning of a well-earned next season of life filled, we hope, with rest, joy, and the knowledge that his legacy has made a lasting impression and will continue through the many lives he has impacted. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed that I, Dale Hutcherson, Mayor of Weakley County, Tennessee, do hereby proclaim heartfelt thanks, appreciation, and recognition to Judge James H. Bradberry for his exceptional service and leadership in the Weakley County community, and on behalf of a grateful county, declare that upon approval from the entire Weakley County Commission on this 30th day of June 2025, that the Weakley County Juvenile Courtroom shall hereby be named the Honorable James H. Bradberry Courtroom. Be it further proclaimed that Judge Bradberry's service will not be forgotten, and his contributions will continue to resonate in our homes, schools, and communities for years to come. Be it further proclaimed that a copy of this proclamation is presented to Judge James H. Bradberry and his family. It will be considered, recognized, and spread upon the minutes of the Board of County Commissioners this afternoon, and I hereby set my hand to this proclamation and cause the seal of Weakley County to be affixed to this proclamation. Thank you, Judge Bradberry.
Well, I would never have thought this day with its beauty would come to me as I laid in a field outside of Gleason with about 100 shotgun pellets in my face. Only 3 lasted me the rest of my life, 2 in my right eye and 1 in my left. And then, as the Lord said, humble yourself before the Lord, and he will pick you up. And look at where he's put me. I cannot say thanks if I said it for the rest of my life, every minute, for y'all all coming, for that plaque being read to me. And I hope that each one of you will have a great life from this time forward, because you will all be in my prayers. I introduced to this a little humor. I had been practicing law here about 5 months, and suddenly the law has changed, and the mayor of the county, as you will remember, could not sit as the juvenile court judge anymore. So we had a meeting that was directed by the county of all the attorneys, and they were told to pick one of their group to sit on the juvenile court judge. We had the meeting. There was about 12 attorneys there. He told the group, to sit in the juvenile court with all those children coming into your court and you dealing with them, you have got to have wisdom. How do you determine if a person has wisdom? And the attorney said, the only way is to see which one has the most gray hair. And he looked at me and he said, therefore there's no argument because Jim Bradberry has more gray hair than anyone here. Anyone have any objections to Jim sitting as the juvenile court judge? And no one said anything. And that's how I became the juvenile court judge. With all of the gray hair, which I have tried to retain over the years. And that's all I have. Thank you. Thank you all for coming. You can't imagine how this makes me feel.
Brent, just take just a moment and tell me about Judge Bradberry and what he has, how he has helped you to grow along the way.
Well, Jim Bradberry is the reason that I ever started law school. He's an amazing man. In 2007, I was working on my master's at the University of Tennessee at Martin, and I stopped in to visit with Jim and told him that I was about to finish my master's degree, and he asked what my plans were. And we talked about various things in the family, but at the end of the conversation, he said, if you'll go to law school, I'll put you in our office here in Dresden. And I said, Jim, I can't go to law school. I'm 40 years old. And Jim said, well, Brent, I didn't start law school until I was 40 years old, and I was blind. I bet within the next 30 days I had applied to take the LSAT and applied to go to law school at the Nashville School of Law. And even before I graduated, he put me to work. So I'm very blessed to have some pre-attorney experience in a law firm. And then I practiced here in Dresden with him for probably 4 years before moving on to working with the state government. And Jim was second in line after my mother and my father. Jim was the third person that I called the day that I received a call from the governor's office that I'd been appointed to the circuit bench. So Jim's always been a light in my life, and I'm very appreciative, certainly for the things that he did for Weakley County and his tenure on the juvenile bench. But it's a much more personal experience for me, and I thank the Lord for Jim Bradberry.
You do have a personal relationship with him.
Absolutely. We've played golf together, and let me tell you, that's a challenge to take Jim golfing. But he can hit a good shot, and then we might not hit so many good shots. But we had a great experience with that, and certainly our family. We've got a large family that's grown up here in Weakley County for generations. Well, let me tell you about that family, the relationship. Jim's dad was James, also, and my grandfather was J.D. Bradberry. They were brothers. And then their third brother was a former chancellor here in Weakley County, Chancellor Homer Bradberry. So those were the three Bradberry brothers, and they had a sister also, Miss Eileen Hodges. All grew up around Gleason in the Sand Hill area. And I don't really remember Jim much in my childhood. He's, what do you say, he's 87 now? And I'm 57. He's 89. Oh, I missed it by a couple of years. Okay. So he's 32 years older than I. So he was more close friends with my father. In fact, my father was in Memphis waiting for Jim to come the night, I think it was New Year's Eve when he had his hunting accident. And Jim was supposed to go to Memphis that night and spend the evening on New Year's Eve with my father and uncle. So they were much more in a personal relationship in the early years with Jim. Mine has been much later in life. So, again, Paul, thank you for letting me share that with you.
Tommy Thomas, former Attorney General.
What year is Jim?
So here is a former Attorney General who has worked with Judge Jim Bradberry for a number of years, Tommy Thomas. What's it like being around Judge?
Well, I knew Jim before he was a judge, and when he first moved back here and started practicing law, he bought Homer Bradberry's old office and then turned part of it into living quarters, and he and his dog Toby lived there. And it was just amazing how he could function with only a dog as seeing eyes. And I've been amazed by him ever since. But great guy, amazingly good lawyer. You'd never know that he was blind. Matter of fact, I've had several clients back in the day. Jim would be representing a client on the other side, and I've had clients say, "No, he's not totally blind, is he?" I said, "Yeah, no, he can't be totally blind the way he functions." And he's just an amazing individual.
Your relationship with him is personal as well as it is professional. What's he like to be around?
He's a great guy. I mean, very personable, a good sense of humor, and just an all-around great guy. Loves sports.
Golf and St. Louis Cardinals baseball.
Yes, and he'll go to sporting events and just listen. And then listen to the crowd, and he can tell what's going on. Amazing perception.
And when you think of him being on the bench for 45 years, that's a lot of people to come before him. Can you imagine that many years of doing one thing for 45 years? Tell me about that.
Well, yeah, I can. I've been practicing law. I practiced law about that long, so yeah, but he's done a great job throughout all these years. He's seen lots of changes. Used to be the juvenile judge was not a lawyer, and he was elected to the bench as the first lawyer, full-time, or not full-time, but to the office of juvenile judge. And been an amazing guy, and I feel honored to have known him all these years.
Chancellor Mike Maloan, what does Jim Bradberry mean to Weakley County in his position of being the juvenile court judge?
Well, Jim's done an outstanding job and a very, very, very difficult job. One of the most difficult jobs we have is dealing with kids and who've gone astray and trying to keep them on the straight path so they don't wind up in adult criminal court. And it's very frustrating, the work you try to do, and they don't really have the resources that they actually need. So he's done a masterful job with not a whole lot to work with over the last 40-something years.
When was the first time you met him, if you recall?
Oh, back when he first moved here from Michigan, back in late 80s. Yeah, he's Homer Bradberry's nephew. So I knew that connection right away.
What does it take to be an attorney dealing with children, anybody under the years of 18?
Well, it's frustrating. It's hard enough in any court dealing with adults. But when you have someone that's immature, irresponsible, and they don't have good role models in their home, in their families, their parents, are usually not. You've got a lot to do, and you don't have a lot to work with. So it's very frustrating.
You were in a law firm many years, and so was he. And there's a lot of work that goes on inside the office of an attorney. I don't know how he was able to do everything that he did. Can you elaborate on that?
He amazes me. A person that's has the disability that he has, and able to he went to law school with that, and so how he's been able to do all that during these years it's amazing. He's quite have a lot of respect for him.
Now, can you tell us the story? You actually ran against Judge Bradberry at that time. Tell me about that.
Well, for many years, the juvenile court judge was the county judge. And the legislature finally got around to saying, well, we really don't need a layperson to be a judge and commit juveniles. So 82 was going to be the first year that we had a elected judge. And Jim was already the sitting juvenile court judge, and I decided to run, and thankfully for him and for me, he won.
And you went on later to...
In 1990.
And to have this position that you are in. Sometimes you get to see some of the young people that have come to your court, and I know you don't want to see those things.
Well, I have to do a lot of termination of parental rights cases, and most of them that come to me, there's a long history of a file that thick in juvenile court of all the things that they've tried to do to prevent it, and so when it doesn't work, I wind up with it. So,
if you could offer a piece of advice to someone who has a challenge, much like as he, with no eyes to be able to see, some without legs to be able to walk, and then for that fact, some that don't have arms and legs, but they all turn out to be attorneys from time to time.
Well, there's a lot that's said that people that have a disability, it magnifies their other abilities, and they do a better job than they normally would because of that shortcoming. So, yes, it is. Fortunately, our profession is one that allows people with disabilities to prosper.
Beau Pemberton. Beau, you are one of the people that have had a long relationship with Judge Bradberry as an attorney. How did you get your job with Judge Bradberry as an attorney?
Paul, it was by a total happenstance that Jim Bradberry and I crossed paths. I owe Judge Bill Acree a thank you for that. Bill Acree is the one who suggested I go meet with Jim Bradberry and get to know him because he had a vacancy in his office. I was in my second year of law school at Knoxville, went and met with him at his home and then again at his office, and the rest is history. That was in 2007, and 18 years later, Jim and I are still working together.
What was it like to work with a man who couldn't see, but he had all the ideas and he also had all of the answers?
I never considered Jim Bradberry blind because the man always had vision. He always had insight. He always had wisdom. It was a privilege to get to learn how to practice law from a master of the craft.
What do you think his high point in his career?
Certainly being juvenile judge for 45 years is a high point, but the other high point that most people tend to forget about is the thousands of clients that he has helped over the years, whether it be with divorce, with custody, with criminal cases. Jim Bradberry was a lawyer that you could come to no matter the circumstances, good, bad, or otherwise. He helped families on and off the bench, Paul, and that was a tradition that still endures to this day. And I'm proud to say Bradberry and Pemberton continues as we speak now.
You said that his name would always be next to yours in the law office. Is that right?
That's correct. As long as I'm walking the earth and as long as Jim Bradberry walks the earth, it'll stay Bradberry and Pemberton.
What advice do you have to someone who might be a little bit uncomfortable working with someone who has a disability, but yet totally qualified to be an attorney?
Focus on the fact that we all have abilities, and we shouldn't look at them as disabilities. We all have abilities in life, and me personally, I've never considered a focus of Jim Bradberry as his blindness and his lack of sight. He has always had abilities that far exceed those, and the man has always been a visionary. And for those that are uncomfortable with disabilities, focus on the abilities and the characteristics that make that person worthwhile.
Keith Jones, there's been a lot of celebrating today of the life of a man who still even till the very last day, still on the job. You spent the majority of your working with young people. Tell me about the judge and what kind of judge he has been all of these years.
Paul, he's just been incredible. He's the fairest that I've ever been around, and because he lost his sight, he doesn't judge. He doesn't have those predisposed judgments, nothing like that. He only hears what is said in front of him. And that's just been incredible. He's my friend. Gosh, we've traveled together. He laughs and says the only time he ever spent in a hotel room beside somebody, I was snoring so loud that he could hear it through the concrete walls. And but we've just been friends, and I think he trusts me, and I absolutely trust him. two rules that I've always lived by, and I'll continue to live by them. The first one is the judge is always right. The second, if you think the judge is wrong, refer back to rule number one. And we've just kind of lived that way and got along, and that I know of, we've never had a crossword. He has called me down a few times, but never a crossword. Having been in court for many, many years with Judge Bradberry, what case stood out to him or to you? There's one particular, and it was a recent case, and he struggled with the decision of a transfer, and it was tough on him. And but the evidence showed, and so he was able to lay down at night and sleep. And but he's always taken cases serious, no matter if they were murders that were needed to be transferred or if it was a speeding ticket. He took all of them serious, and he has never failed to take a case serious where families are going to be uprooted. And he's just a great judge. I look forward to working with Tommy, or Judge Moore, I should say. I have to call him. I'm going to have to get my bearings down on Judge Moore. But I look forward to working with Judge Moore. He's going to be great.
General Sessions Judge Tommy Moore.
Jim Bradberry is an amazing person to start with, and he has had an illustrious career as a lawyer and as a juvenile judge. An amazing career. He started the law school after his accident and injury that caused him to lose his sight, and most of us would have done nothing at that point but commiserate, I guess, and seek disability and just quit, I guess. I mean, that's kind of the way I'd look at it. Give up. But instead, he embarked on a new career, went to law school, passed the bar exam, came back to Weakley County and opened up law office, and so has been a lawyer for 45 years or more, as well as a judge. And in that law office, he has been a mentor. He has, over the years, hired young lawyers to come into his office and has groomed them and apprenticed them and taught them how to practice, and most of them have gone off on their own and been highly successful. And I think every one of them would say that it was because of his influence and his direction and his instruction and his showing them and teaching them how to be a lawyer that caused them to be then in turn successful in their own careers. And they look back on him as their teacher, and they were his legal disciples. So I think if that's all he had done, he has done a lot for the legal profession within our county. The second thing is that he's just a good man. He is a fine Christian man. And if that was all he did in his life, he would have been seen as a successful person. But I have had a lot of interaction with him over the years and find him to be a man of integrity. He's the same person in his home. He's the same person in the workplace and in the courtroom and in his law office as he is in the public, as he is at church. He's the same person. He is a Christian man when nobody else is watching. In that regard, I think we have to see him as just a good man and a great example for the rest of us on how to live our lives. And so there again, that's a wonderful life that he has led and a significant life that he has led. And then the third thing, as a juvenile judge, I think it is a great thing when we have a man who knows the law, that is a man of integrity and who is a Christian, to be the person who is in charge of dealing with the juveniles of our county, and particularly those who have found themselves making poor decisions and found themselves to be charged with delinquencies and found themselves not doing right. I like that he has been the person for the last 45 years who has been in charge of that juvenile court. I know that every time he's there, he is looking out for the best interest of the county and what is best for each one of those children. And he is wanting to do that thing that will help rehabilitate that person if possible, and what he can do to help encourage them to become, good citizens and people who don't commit crimes as an adult. And I think he has a big heart for young people and children, and that has shown and been proven over the years. And so he's just done a great job as a juvenile judge, an exemplary job there, and he's just been a great lawyer and had a wonderful career as a member of the legal community. And then he's just a good man. He is, in addition to that, my friend, and I appreciate him. And he's one of those people that if I had need of a friend, he would step up, and I think a lot of him. Well, I guess one of the things I think about often is the fact that, just for instance, yesterday at his retirement reception, I was there as he arrived, and I was wearing one of my nicer suits, and because I thought I needed to dress up. But as he walked in, he looked like a model out of the GQ magazine. He's slender and tall and erect and just he looks the part of an attorney, and he's just well groomed and well dressed, and I feel like Lyndon Johnson talking about John F. Kennedy. He would say they always said that Johnson wore $2,000 suits that were tailored for him, and Johnson would say John F. Kennedy could go to a Penny's and buy a suit off the rack and look better than I do in a tailored $2,000 suit. Well, that's Jim and me. I think my suit I wore yesterday cost as much as his did, but I look like a slob, But one of the things is my suit is about 10 sizes larger than his, and so my robe is 10 sizes larger than his. But the way I feel about it is I'm putting on, the way I look at it is that Jim's robe is bigger than mine and always will be, even though the size of his robe is smaller. I'm putting on a little robe compared to his now, and I'm in awe of his work on that bench, and I just hope I can do half as well as he's done. And so it's big shoes to fill. It's a big robe to wear, there. And I've been watching some stuff on YouTube about Ty Simpson and talking about Alabama football. And you can't talk about Alabama football right now without talking about Nick Saban and the new coach. And they just said nobody can walk into that position as coach at Alabama without being compared to Saban. And nobody can live up to it. So nobody can put on the juvenile judge's robe in Weakley County without a comparison to Jim Bradberry, and there is no comparison to Jim. So, hey, that's where I fit in. Is that I'm just hoping I can just do half as well as he has, and I'll be looking to him for guidance and direction, and he needs to have his phone handy.
You've been listening to 30 Minutes, a community affairs program on Thunderbolt Radio. You can listen to this broadcast and others anytime by visiting thunderboltradio.com and following the Thunderbolt Radio and Digital YouTube page. Thanks for listening.